Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland, and behind me is High Trees House, London. So this video is about the celebrated High Trees House case of 1947. So this building here was built in the 1930s. You can probably tell by that style of architecture. Don't think it's aged too badly. But anyway, it was rented out, and Central London Property Trust, as I understand, owned it. They sublet it to High Trees House Limited, this company which was then finding tenants for it. Then the Second World War came. The initial rent that High Trees House Limited had to pay to Central London Property Trust Limited was £2,500 a year, which was a very tidy sum at the time. You can multiply by at least 100 to get modern values. And I know that doesn't seem very much, even so. Then the war came, and obviously a lot of people moved out of London. There was evacuation because London's been bombed so heavily. So it was a real headache for High Trees House to find tenants to rent these flats here. So they requested that the rent be halved, and the Central London Property Trust agreed that they would allow it to be halved for the duration of the war. Then the war ended, obviously people started to come back to London, and then in 1946 Central London Property Trust began an action. They said, actually, we want the full rent, not just in future, but we want this retrospectively. For the times when we let you off half rent, actually we want you to pay full rent in arrears. So they wanted to renege on their promise. So the case went to court because High Trees House said, well, we had a deal, you didn't have to let us off the rent, but you did let us off the rent, so no, I'm afraid you cannot go back on your promise. So the case was heard by Denning J, as he then was, subsequently Lord Denning, who was a law lord, a very distinguished jurist till he died in 1998 at a very great age. So this is where the doctrine of promissory estoppel was really developed, and Denning said that where a promise is made and intended to be relied upon, and indeed is in fact relied upon, then that promise is binding. And equity will prevent a party from breaking that promise, because that would be unconscionable. On the faith of this promise, High Trees House made certain decisions, and you cannot then, it was 6 years later, or even 7 years later, break that promise and get them to pay all that they were forgiven from paying. So this undermined Pinnell's case, that early 17th century ruling, where it was held that the part payment of debt does not absolve a party from payment of the remainder of the debt. And there was another case, Folkes and Beer, as well, which came to largely the same conclusion. So that was a major change, and that was how the doctrine of promissory estoppel began to crystallize. So although the action was initiated in 1946, the case was held, was decided in 1947. Of course, it's the year of decision you give in these case citations. So things have moved on since then. Promissory estoppel has changed quite a lot. Incidentally, sorry, I should say that crucial definition of promissory estoppel, that came in the obiter dicta, not the ratio decidendi. It was when Denning was looking at a counterfactual scenario, supposing the landlord or the tenant had done this or that. That would be the situation. So there we are. It's a fine block of flats right beside Clapham Common, which is just over here. Okay, so that's enough. So I hope you enjoy my English law channel. Please book online lessons with me in law. Toodaloo.